Hello, it's Lou Collins, and today I'm going to talk you through video number 3 in the series of Make Me a Card Maker. Today we're going to be looking at die cutting with a die cutting machine and embossing with embossing folders as well, and then I'm going to throw in at the end a little bit of ink blending as well. We do have lots and lots of other tutorials on Craft World, so you can really delve into each one of these techniques much further, but I'm going to cover all the basics for you here, and we're going to complete a card in the process as well, so you can follow on and start to build those skills. So the first thing we're going to do is look at die cutting. Now I've prepared a card base. I have a 6x6 inch card base here. This was a pre-made one, and we discussed card bases back in video number 1, so if you missed that you can catch up there. We also talked about matting and layering, so I've started that process by cutting myself a panel of teal cardstock, and this is a little bit smaller, so that's my first mat there. Now what I'm going to be doing is die cutting into this mat. So this one is about 5 and 3/4 inches, both long and wide. Now for the dies, I'm bringing in a card making magic die set, but the techniques I'm showing you are applicable to absolutely any cutting die. There are hundreds of different brands and types on the market. So we're going to be looking at today a decorative die that's going to cut into your cardstock a beautiful pattern. I've got a large and a small corner that I'm going to use, but then we're also going to look at our simple shapes and our nesting dies as well. You'll hear lots of these terms coming up maybe in craft magazines when you're following instructions, for example, maybe on Craft World on videos, maybe when you watch people do live videos on social media. So this is a good place to get to grips with all of those terms. So the first thing I'm going to do is die cut my beautiful patterned corner into my mat here that I said I've already cut down to size. Now I did make sure before I trimmed the mat down to size that this corner would actually fit inside. Now, if you've not seen a cutting die before, they are metal. They can come in different colour metals as well. Sometimes they have a colour over the top, so they're coated with different colours. Majority of them are silver. Now what you'll find is you'll have a flat side. Sometimes it has holes in, so this one looks like a bit like Swiss cheese there, and these holes are for releasing the paper out of the die later. But on the other side, the non-smooth side, you'll notice you've got the pattern, the design that you want. This one's got a beautiful leafy corner, and there's the cutting blades. Now we call them cutting blades or cutting edges. They're not going to cut your fingers, but they are raised up. So with a lot of pressure, that's going to cut through your paper. Now you do need a lot of pressure to do this. You can't simply put that onto the paper and press into it. It won't work. So that's where our die cutting machine comes in. So I'm just going to bring my machine in, and again, there are lots of these on the market, lots of different types of machines. Most of them will come with plates like this that are adaptable, so you can move the different plates around. And if I just show you here, we have 4 plates in this, what we call a sandwich. So this stack of plates here is called a sandwich, and we're going to put our paper and our die through in these. Okay, so a lot of machines will have a base plate, and that will usually be a nice thick one. This machine's called the Sizzix Big Shot. There is a Big Shot Plus, which is a much wider machine. It will fit A4 paper through. This goes up to about A5 paper, and your paper size that will run through is determined by the size of your plates. I've then got another plate here, and this is a thinner plate. This one is really what we'd call a shim. Okay, so when you're using your smaller dies or your thinner dies, which most dies are nowadays, these thin metal ones, you'll need to use this. And then we have our cutting plates, and you can see from the marks on my plates that these are used a lot, and I cut into them and I mix them around, so it doesn't matter which ones go on top and underneath. Each and every machine will have a different plate combination, a different number of plates perhaps, different thicknesses of plates, and those plates will only work with that machine. So do check the instructions or the manual to be sure that you're getting the correct sandwich of plates for your die cutting. So let's do a basic cut here. And another tip for you if you're die cutting, another essential that I'd suggest you pick up is a low tack tape. So a tape that I like to use is called low tack tape, and that just means that when it touches your paper and you stick it to your paper, when you lift it up it won't tear away. Some people like to use what's also known as washi tape, but if you search low tack tape you should find it. It's a little bit like painters and decorators tape, for example. So I'm going to position my die with the cutting edge, the cutting blades down onto my paper whereabouts I want to make those cut marks, and I'm going to use my low tack tape just to hold that die in place on the paper there. So only a little bit, I don't need a lot of tape. Once it's in the machine and the plates have a grip of it, it shouldn't move anywhere. I've got another die I want to cut into this panel, but I'm going to do one at a time. You'll find you get a better cut. Now here's a tip for you when you first start die cutting. I suggest you turn this upside down, which is another reason for using the tape, so it remains in place, and you cut upwards. So the cutting blades are going to be touching the paper facing upwards. So I've just removed the top plate of the sandwich. I'm going to put the die and the paper onto the clear plates here, and then I'm going to place the top plate on top. You can see my machine is really well loved. Now I'm just making sure that the plates in that sandwich there, so there's your sandwich, are all nice and flush around the edge, so nice and straight. And then I'm going to put them in the machine and I'm going to start feeding the plates in. So there's some rollers in the machine here. I'm just going to push them in until I can see the handle move. Can you see that there? So that's because I'm pressing the rollers inside with the plates. So now I can take this handle and I can feed those plates through, and I tend to hold the top of the machine with one hand and then I roll them through with the other, with the handle. Now as you go through, and you can see that the paper there and the die is just going underneath the rollers now, you'll feel there's quite a bit of pressure, and this may be quite hard for some of you to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go forwards, and you may get a clunk at the end where the rollers sort of jump down away from the pressure of the die and the paper. And then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to come backwards. Now it's just a habit of mine, I like to come backwards. Now today I've purposely chosen a very intricate die for you because I didn't want this to cut through perfectly first time. I want to show you some tips for allowing this to cut. Now you can see at the top here, this has started cutting. Okay, so we can see through there, some of the bits have started falling out, and you will get pieces fall out with die cutting. So I ran this through this direction. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn my paper 90 degrees and run it through again. So over the die cutting plates, very often what you'll find is you won't have perfectly even pressure across the entire plate. Some areas will have more pressure than others. And this is always a good reason when you're doing a large die like this, or a very detailed die, for turning your plates and running that through a second time, just so that you capture all the areas that you didn't quite get the first time. And now that's cut all the way through. So once your die is cut through, an essential tool that I'd absolutely recommend for anyone getting into die cutting is a pokey tool. Now in America I believe they're called an awl, and they are just a very sharp metal point, often with a wooden or a rubber handle that you can poke firstly into your die. So let's remove that tape from the die there, and I tend to stick it to the top of my machine just to keep it safe. So into your die, so if we just look at this piece of paper that's here, that's left in the die, if I turn that over I can see that through the holes in the back of the die, and I can use those holes just to pop that out there. Okay, so you can use them on the back. These little tiny holes are called release holes for that reason. And then we've got our piece of paper. Now as you can see, as I'm tapping this, more and more little pieces are coming out, but some of them have held in and they need a little bit of help. So that's where you can take your awl or your pokey tool, and you can go ahead and you can start just poking through all the pieces. Now they're cut around the edge, but they just need a little bit of help to wiggle them free. So just work your way round, and what I just tend to do is to go in a shape and then give it a wiggle, and those pieces, as you can see here, will all start to fall out. So now I've got all of those pieces out, what I want to do is take my smaller triangle and I'm going to do this corner as well. Now this is what we would call a decorative die. If you have a look at your die cut, what you'll see is that you've got quite a dark line running through the cardstock where that's cut. If you have any parts, and I think I might have a little bit just in here, where the line is ever so faint and you're not quite sure it's cut through, we actually call that ghosting. So that's where it's possibly time to just twist that 90 degrees and run that through once more. There we go. So now I've got my panel, and if I lay that onto my white card base, we can see that white come through and it's absolutely beautiful. It looks as if it's been laser cut. So I'm going to pop that to the side because what I want to do next is create a sentiment block to go on top of this, and we're going to do that with a different type of die. Now these are very similar in that they have the cutting edge on one side and the flat edge on the other, but these are what we call nesting dies, and they come in many different shapes and sizes. Very often they are your more basic simple shapes, for example circles, squares, rectangles. And some of them have straight edges, some have scalloped edges, some even have a stitched effect to the edge. But essentially they are shapes that will fit one inside of the other, and you'll have from tiny sometimes all the way up to really large. They'll all fit inside each other, lots of different increments of the same shape. So I'm going to use these as a way of matting and layering a sentiment block. So we talked about matting and layering in video number 1. So I'm just going to show you here on my card. If I just bring this back in, I'm going to have a sentiment on white, and I'm going to cut that with this circle. So I'm going to put that on here. To make that really stand out and pop, I'm going to then mat that onto a slightly larger piece of cardstock, and that's going to be this darker teal colour. So I'm going to cut that with the larger circle there. Again, I'm going to tape each of these down. Now because they are very intricate, we don't need to take them down a lot. It will be no issue at all to run these through the machine just the once and get them to cut perfectly. So let's go ahead and do that. Now again, I don't like to cut more than one die at a time. I prefer to put one in my machine, run that through once, and then do the next die. This way you don't risk your dies moving or overlapping in the machine, because if the metal overlaps another piece of metal, so another die, you could potentially bend or misshape your die, and that would make it not work as well, if at all. Now also with nesting dies, you'll find you get apertures left in what would be our waste. Sometimes it's nice to position these apertures when you're die cutting into the center of your panel of cardstock so you can reuse these again. And something else you can do with these, we've got our larger circle and our smaller circle, is you can then layer together the waste, and as you can see we've got a nice border. So I would cut away at this white edge around here, take this waste away, and you've got another nice panel for a card there. So just making the most of all of your dies. Now we're going to move on to embossing with an embossing folder. So I've got a beautiful folder here. This is a paper discovery one. This is from the Japanese Dream collection, and I absolutely love the magnolia on there. So I'm just going to pop my piece of paper, and that's my white one, inside the folder and close it. Now the embossing folder has on it some ridges on one side and then a slightly smoother area on the other. But what happens is the ridges off of this side then go into gaps on this side, so it closes completely flat. It's a bit like a jigsaw and it slots into each other. I'm actually going to position this piece of paper, this circle, where I'm going to get the most embossing detail on it, which I think would be there, and I can see that through. And I'm going to put it through my die cutting machine, also known as an embossing machine. But we do need to change the sandwich for this, and you'll find this with most machines, you will need to alter the sandwich. Now the way to know how to alter your sandwich is firstly look at your instruction booklet, look at your manual for your machine, but if you've got a rough guide, maybe you've got a second-hand machine and it doesn't have the booklet with it, the easiest way to work it out is to have a look at the thickness of your embossing folder and have a look at the thickness of all of your plates. So I've got two that are thicker than the embossing folder here, but this one here, this thinner one, is about the same thickness. So if I put these two together, they're around about the same width. So I'm going to remove this folder and put in this one instead. So remove the plate and put in this folder, just repositioning my paper in there. Again, I'm going to put the folder and the paper just under the top plate there. Sandwich everything back together, making sure it's all flush around the edges, and I'm going to feed that back through the machine. Now you may find that there's a lot of pressure with your embossing folder, and that's fine. If you do have a lot of pressure, you may want to look at using a different plate, swapping a different plate round, or you can try using a thinner paper or cardstock inside the folder. This may help also. So let's take a look at this embossing. It's absolutely beautiful. I love the effect of embossing. Let me just capture the shadows on there for you. So we've got some gorgeous texture in that plain piece of cardstock now, and sometimes that's just enough to give it some detail. So now we can start putting our cards together. We've got the card base, and we learned how to find card bases in video 1. We've done some matting and layering, but we've then die cut into the matting and layering as well. I've got a little bit of sticky there, so I'm just going to grab my adhesive eraser again and just take that stickiness off. That's where I taped the die down when I was die cutting that beautiful leafy corner. So we've got our matting and layering. Then we've got some more matting and layering, but rather than the card base, we've got the two edges, and that can sit there. And then I've already gone ahead and I've die cut another type of die that you'll find, and this is from some word dies. So again, from that beautiful teal colour, and they are going to sit beautifully over here. Now what you may find is sometimes that a little bit of colour around the edges of your layers will help them to stand out, and I would suggest doing this with an ink blending brush or an ink blending foam on a handle as well. So take a resistant surface. If you don't have an ink blending mat, you could use a glass mat, or you could use simply a piece of plastic packaging maybe. I've actually already got some ink on my brush here, and for the moment I'm actually not going to add any more on because I don't know how much ink is in here and it's not dried. So I may have enough because I just want to add some subtle colour around the edge of this. So what I'm going to do with the ink already on my brush is I'm going to come onto the mat and I'm going to go in little circles, and just in those little circles just allow the edges of the bristles to touch the edge of the circle, and I can see there already I'm starting to get some teal coming off onto the edge, and I'm being ever so light with the brush, small circles so I can just dip the edge in a tiny little bit just to pick up some colour on the edge there. And if I just show you that, we've got that gorgeous teal colour all the way around the edge, just lifting that up, and that's just using the excess off my brush. Now you can use lots of different inks for this. This is the one that I've used with this brush, and it's a Distress Oxide, a very creamy and water-based ink, so water reactive. You can spritz it and water it down to be a watercolour and all of these different things as well. So all that's left for me to do now is to take some adhesive and build this card up. So I'm going to use foam tape for this one, and the reason for me using foam tape for this one is purely because we've got that those beautiful gaps between the teal colour card and the white colour base, and I really want to show those off. So I want to see a little bit of a drop shadow between the two to make it look nice and deep and dimensional. So I'm putting a nice wide piece of foam down the center of this panel here. That's just going to lift everything up in the middle so it doesn't bow. And then I'm going to take a thinner foam tape and I'm going to go all the way around the edge of my card with this white foam tape. Again, be aware of the scissors you're using when you're cutting foam tape. We covered adhesives in, I believe it was video 1 or video 2. Go back and check out the other ones because there's lots of information in them. We cover a few different techniques and some advice for different tools and materials in each of the videos. So we have talked about adhesives and which ones I would choose, where and why. So as I've stuck that down, I've decided to have this solid panel in the background down to the bottom right hand corner, and that's completely your choice. You could put it in on any corner you wanted it to be. And then I'm going to put my mats and layers for my sentiment block down the bottom as well. So I can put these on with foam tape or I can put them on with glue, just to reduce the bulk as such of the card, just to make sure that it's not really thick and heavy for posting. I'm going to put foam tape between the white and the teal mats and layers of the circle, but then I'm going to glue with a wet glue so it's flat the dark teal onto the card. So just lining that up, and then I'm going to put my wet glue on here just so that I don't have another additional layer of foam between those layers. So then I've only got 2 thicknesses of foam between the two. And the same with my sentiment, I'm going to glue these on with a wet glue as well to keep them nice and flat. So there, with die cutting, with embossing and with a little bit of ink blending, we've created another card and you're really well on your way to becoming a master card maker. Don't forget to catch up when it's ready with video number 4, and that will complete your series of Make Me a Card Maker, and you can move on to explore lots of additional techniques.